NBA players have all had their fair share of controversy on and off the court. Despite being titans of the sport, what else could define their life? What life-changing occurrences have made these seemingly untouchable men human again? Find out in the rest of the video. These are the most controversial moments from NBA players. Number 1. Derrick Rose and his sexual assault trial. This one hurt to hear. Derrick Rose was once upon a time the face of the NBA. As the youngest MVP in league history, he had so much promise. Key words: had. Rose was plagued with injury after injury, ultimately derailing his career entirely. Now, as half the player he used to be, he typically comes off the bench for most of the teams he plays for. Despite his shortcomings, he still holds the heart of many of his fans. The tragic career of Rose has made him a golden boy in the eyes of many. Unfortunately, his career is not without its blemishes. In August of 2013, him and his 2 associates allegedly broke into the Los Angeles apartment of a former ex and then took turns raping her. Los Angeles Police Department investigated, interviewed witnesses, and compiled evidence. Rose wasn't charged, and the applicable statute of limitations expired this past August. The accuser claimed that she was intoxicated and thus could not have offered consent, and sued Rose for $21.5 million. Now, in most cases, an athlete would have negotiated an out-of-court settlement. His entire career and reputation were on the line if he was found guilty. He'd lose out on sponsors, contracts, and would definitely have been banned from the NBA. Despite all those risks, he went to trial anyway. He and his accuser faced off in the Los Angeles federal courthouse in October of 2016. Over the course of 9 days, Rose's attorneys aggressively challenged the accuser's recollection and intentions. Eventually, the accuser acknowledged that some of her alleged facts were exaggerations or misstatements. A jury of 6 women and 2 men held for Rose. U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit affirmed the verdict on appeal, putting the hellish situation behind them. Next up, NBA players who got into a few fights with the police against and lost. These 2 NBA players claim that they were victims of racially motivated police brutality in 2 separate situations. Tabo Sefolosha and Sterling Brown may have lost their fights initially, but taking it to court is where things got really heated. Sefolosha suffered a broken fibula and ligament damage to his ankle in an altercation outside a Manhattan nightclub in 2015. You can imagine how injuries this severe can be bit as an issue. As a professional athlete, your body's a temple, and injuries are the absolute last thing that you want. Apparently, Sefolosha called a 5'6" police officer a midget, to which the officer jumped on him and beat him. Luckily, Sefolosha was found not guilty of resisting arrest and obstruction of justice. City of New York later agreed to pay him $4 million in out-of-court settlement. 3 years later, in 2018, the Milwaukee Bucks guard Sterling Brown suffered puncture wounds in his back and facial cuts and bruises after an incident with police officers. Brown illegally parked his car. I know, lock him up for life. Brown was exiting Walmart, and a total of 8 officers forced him to the ground and tased him. The officers also made directly racist comments towards Brown. One even asked, "What's wrong with these people, man?" One officer later posted racist memes about Brown and black NBA players on social media. Brown, understandably, currently suing the city. These 2 incidences were among many high-profile incidents of killing of unarmed black men. Incidences like this, the killing of Eric Garner, Michael Brown, and Freddie Gray, only further fueled the Black Lives Matter movement. Rest is history. Number 3, I'm sorry, Kobe fans, but you know what Kobe was most famously for off the court, and it wasn't being a girl dad. Some of you longtime NBA fans already know what I'm talking about. I hate to talk ill of the dead, but this is perhaps one of the most infamous controversies in NBA history. June 30, 2003, 19-year-old woman working the front desk at Lodge and Spa Cordelia apparently toured Bryant around the property. She later went to Bryant's hotel room, where she said he raped her. Bryant was 24 at the time, was charged with 1 count of felony assault. It took 14 months for the case to be resolved. The accuser decided she would not testify, and prosecutors dropped the case September 1, 2004. A civil suit brought by the accusers in 2004 was settled in 2005, marking the end of an often graphic legal saga that drew out a lot of unwanted attention. This case is a bit of a roller coaster if you did not follow it. There was an in-depth investigation that took place, but the DNA testing proved to be complicated. The woman had apparently had sex with someone else only 15 hours after the incident. This made things harder in terms of the prosecution. prosecution. In addition to this long and very public trial, the resolve of the accuser began to wither over time. It's a battle of nutrition, and Bryant won it in the end after some perseverance and time. Although he hardly spoke of the situation, he did make a public statement once saying that while he was guilty of adultery, he was not guilty of assault. This is a hard subject for many basketball fans because Kobe's legacy, while he may never know what truly happened in that hotel room, we can confirm that they did have intercourse, forced or unforced. We'll never know. 4. In the NBA, who do you think screams, "Trump is my president"? Myers Leonard. Oh boy, where do we start? For those who don't know him, he's the guy that remained standing during the national anthem during the NBA's Black Lives Matter protests. With family in the military, he wanted to honor the flag, but in the midst of the nightmare that was 2020, he chose not to kneel with his brothers on the court. I'm not going to get into too much detail with the George Floyd case. We all recall the uproar that was caused in the wake of his death. The NBA in particular was amongst the leading protesters. Every member of every team kneeled during the anthem. Every member except Leonard. His controversial decision received a mixture of responses. While he was among his teammates and their cause, he also told the media that he was on the side of the military and police. Want to talk about controversy? NBA Twitter was going haywire after his non-decision to pick up a side. Some called him racist, some called him a hero. Some loved it, others hated it. It's really tough for anyone to accept given the state of the world. Wasn't too much longer till the media made up their mind about Leonard. On a gaming stream, he used a racial slang word that had his management immediately call him up and take him off the air. This made waves across all media platforms. Coupled with his decision to stand during the protests, Leonard suddenly became the target of ridicule. His insensitive behavior regarding race clearly began to show, and his NBA career slowly came to an end. With the NBA being a zero-tolerance community, it's surprising he played any games at all in his last season with Miami. 5. Who would have guessed that even this video caught a case of COVID-19? Got it from those unvaccinated players. Statistically speaking, we are still in a pandemic. Things may have changed since 2020, but for the most part, we have all the luxuries of the modern world back. This is due in large part to the efforts of doctors and scientists creating a vaccine. This vaccine has in some ways become the visa for a lot of regular day activities. With the NBA being a national organization and hosting games in various different cities, it's understandable for it to have its fair share of rules and restrictions. Vaccinated players may continue the game regularly, while unvaccinated players must coincide with the mandates put forth by their city. This sucks. Essentially, players like Kyrie Irving, Chris Paul, Devin Booker, and Andrew Wiggins are subjected to mandates that could affect their availability. Andrew Wiggins, for example, has chosen not to get vaccinated. He's made it clear that he will not get vaccinated unless forced to. I get it, it's his right to choose. The controversial part is when his team city San Francisco put out a vaccine mandate that pretty much prevents Wiggins from playing at home games unvaccinated. In the NBA, availability is the most important part of the player's game. You can be as talented as Kyrie Irving, but if you're not allowed to play a game, it's pointless. Kyrie, for example, is an amazing player, highly respected as the NBA's best ball handler, also infamous for being against the vaccines and being a drama queen. If he wasn't so darn good, the Nets would have traded him a long time ago. His availability is in question, but the organization has their hands tied. He's the best friend of their main all-star Kevin Durant, and his skill is unquestionable. Just sucks for his teammates, fans, and management that he can't play a full season. Players like him have been slandered on NBA Twitter for their choices. Some call them selfish, and others claim they simply don't have the passion for the game. It's a tough situation to be in between. While Wiggins was a Warriors favorite for fans in the first half of the offseason, fans now want to trade him. The community can truly be ruthless when it comes to the quality of their team. With that, let's wrap up the video. Tell us which moment shocked you the most. Thanks for watching. See you again next time.